Let's start with your analysis on how Pakistan's 2024 has been so far.
A country like Pakistan, we have seen it going through all kinds of crises. Somebody has to just study crisis. They should just study Pakistan.
True.
So you enjoy the power till you have the blessings of the military. That's been the case with Imran Khan. And now, hopefully, if Shehbaz Sharif continues to stay in the good books, he will finish his tenure. Otherwise, we will see what happens here.
But do you think now that Imran Khan is getting popular and he's against the military, and if he happened to get out of
But how will he get out? That's the big question.
why do institutions still support and back Pakistan?
Pakistan kind of built up its own position that it's a country which is too dangerous to fail.
Since you spoke about China, there have been a lot of targeted killings as well of Chinese civilians in Pakistan.
Pakistan is seeking China's support that they should talk to the Taliban to control TTP.
To end our conversation, I would like you to give me prediction for Pakistan for 2025. How do you think they are going to cope up with all the situations that are happening? In today's episode, we turn our focus to a nation that has been at the center of geopolitical discussions and regional tensions, Pakistan. 2024 has been a year of unprecedented turmoil for the country, marked by political upheaval, economic crisis, and social unrest. To help us unpack Pakistan's tumultuous year, we're joined by Dr. Shalini Chawla, a distinguished scholar and expert on Pakistan and South Asian geopolitics. Dr. Chawla has extensively studied Pakistan's military, economy, and political structure, and her insights are invaluable in understanding the challenges facing the nation. In this episode, we explore Pakistan's ongoing economic and political crisis and the factors driving the instability. The imprisonment of Imran Khan, the protests that erupted on November 24, and the implications on Pakistan's future. The role of Pakistan's military in shaping the nation's governance and its outsized influence on policy decisions. What Pakistan is doing wrong, the critical missteps that have excavated its challenges, and finally, what lies ahead for Pakistan and what steps it could take to navigate out of this crisis. Dr. Shalini Chawla brings clarity and depth to a complex subject, offering a nuanced perspective on a nation at a crossroads. So let's dive into the crucial discussions and try to make sense of what the future holds for Pakistan. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to take a quick moment and ask for a favor. We noticed that 93% of you who watch our content regularly aren't subscribed yet. My promise to you is simple. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll keep working hard to bring thought-provoking conversations, incredible guests, and the topics you really care about the most. It is practically free for you, but it makes a huge difference for us, helping us grow, reach more people, and bring even better content your way. Thank you for supporting. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video. Dr. Shalini Chawla, welcome to Diary for Publisher again. Always a pleasure to have you over, ma'am, and I'm looking forward for a conversation today.
Thank you, Shivam. Always a pleasure to be here with you. And I think we'll have a nice next 1 hour discussing whatever is in your mind.
Of course, we'll talk about Pakistan. You being an expert and well versed with Pakistan, of course, the year hasn't been the best for Pakistan stability. I mean, they have from the beginning there have been instability in terms of political, in terms of economical, in terms of security. There's a lot of terrorism. Let's start with your analysis on how Pakistan's 2024 has been so far.
2024, in many ways, has been kind of an year which shows quite distinct shifts in Pakistan. The basis for which I would say was already there in 2023, so the seeds were already there, and we saw a lot of changes in 2024. There was a lot of instability which was continuing. We saw the elections happening. Nawaz Sharif came back in 2023 itself, but they had the general elections in February. The elections were allegedly rigged because army was keen on Shehbaz Sharif being in power, or I will be more right if I say that army was keen on keeping Imran Khan behind bars.
Hmm.
So Shehbaz Sharif's government came into power, and the elections were rigged, as I said. Imran Khan's party, PTI, was denied the election symbol, and they could not even fight the election as a party despite the rigging. Despite the fact that they were denied the election symbol, it emerged as one of the most popular, party, where the support was very, very evident despite whatever mishandling was done, I would say, in the elections, as we get it from the reports from Pakistani dailies only. Now, the distinct part about the elections was, one was obviously it was the way it was handled, which has been also in the previous elections we saw in 2018, when Imran Khan was in a reverse role, and he was brought into power. But this time, I think the difference in the elections was that what we saw in Punjab, which has been a PMLN, strong area, where there even Nawaz Sharif struggled to actually win. So that was something very different that we saw in this election. And the popularity of Imran Khan was very evident, which has not died down. And I think this man, I'm not a fan of Imran Khan, and I'm not promoting him in any form, but I think he's shown immense resilience by not accepting any offer of, if there are offers, which I'm presuming there are, for him to go into some kind of a luxury exile, which has been
Yeah.
a tradition for Pakistani political leaders, and almost most of them have done that. So he's shown that resilience. He continues to stay behind bars, and then he holds that support uh, within Pakistan, where we also saw that he is not ready to give up. And we saw recently, 24th November, his call for the march, the final call for march, which was there with thousands of protesters, PTI supporters, and protested on the streets. They reached the Islamabad D Chowk. And the difference here was that the protests were led by Imran Khan's third wife, Bushra Bibi. So that was a new addition, I would say, here. Before this protest, what actually became a big trigger for this protest was the passing of the 26th Constitutional Amendment Act, which happened in Pakistan, which was, incidentally, just for your information, I believe it just took 16 minutes for the assembly to pass it into a
But what does that
act.
mean, though? What does
Does
that?
that mean that it was obviously not debated, not discussed, and it was, and it was already decided that this should go through?
But what does this bill mean for Pakistan?
So 26th Amendment Act is very critical. In a way, yes and no, critical, yes and no also. Yes, in the no, I would say, because this is something which we have seen with the multiple rulers, army heads have done in Pakistan, have the constitution. We have seen it in the past. But talking about this specific amendment, this has been, there are multiple parts of this amendment, but if we have to, like, kind of tell you in short, then two critical implications obviously it has. That one is that it reduces the power of the Supreme Court. So
Okay.
judiciary's functioning definitely has been targeted here. The appointment of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of Pakistan, that appointment now, the party which will have the majority in the legislative assembly will have an upper hand, because the selection will be done by the parliamentary committee, and amongst the three top senior judges. And it's not like before the senior most becomes the chief justice. Apart from that, there is also a bench which has been established in the Supreme Court. So the judiciary's powers definitely have been
Has
curtailed,
diminished. Okay.
because we what happened. I mean, this there has been this. The anti feeling for the judiciary, I would say, in all the political parties, because if you see PPP, for example, their elected prime minister was sentenced to death by the judiciary, and then 30 years later the same judiciary said that Bhutto's trial was not a fair trial.
Okay.
And then if you come to PMLN, Nawaz Sharif went behind bars when judiciary took that call. So, and then recent years, what was seen in Pakistan, that there was judiciary was really asserting itself with respect to Imran Khan. So that was also something which did not, I think, go well there with the military headquarters and the political parties also, which are more or less totally subservient to the military at the moment. It's always been there. If you have to be in power, you be subservient to the military. You are more or less like a puppet for the army
The
chief, I would
army,
say. I mean,
yes.
I would not like to use that word, but that's the reality
That's the
in
reality. True.
Pakistan.
True.
So you enjoy the power till you have the blessings of the military. That's been the case with Imran Khan, and now hopefully, if Shehbaz Sharif continues to stay in the good books, he will finish his tenure. Otherwise, we will see what happens here. So that power has been curtailed, coming to 26th Amendment. And second part, very important, is that the army chief and the military gets more power. So army chief has got an extension. Asim Munir, who was
Yeah.
scheduled to retire in 2025, will retire in 2027. And he could potentially even get a 5-year more extension, which implies that he would retire in 2032. So his position is much more stronger now, and we see the judiciary's power being diminished. And behind all this, one of the critical objective is also to continue to keep Imran Khan behind bars. So that definitely, if they have a hold on the judiciary, Imran Khan is definitely not getting out too soon.
Right.
So what happened in the November protests, which Imran Khan called for on 24th of November, one of the demands was to kind of against the 26th Amendment. And then the demand from his supporters was to get Imran Khan out of jail. Also kind of that Shehbaz Sharif government lacks credibility, and it doesn't, it's not the credible government, so it should not be there. So none of them were met. The protests happened, the mobilization happened. We saw thousands of protesters. So if you see that, there was a lot of debate whether the protests were successful or not. So they were not successful in the sense that the demands of the protesters and the PTI supporters were not met, which were not likely to be met. But I think you have to really notice the fact that despite what happened after May 9th to PTI supporters, despite how army reacted and acted, still there was so much support, and anti-military agitation, I would say, was there. So a man sitting behind bars could just call thousands of people on the road and mark to the heart, in the heart of the capital. They could just go there, and the whole city came to a standstill. There were thousands, hundreds of containers, I believe. I don't have the numbers, but I read somewhere in the Pakistani Daily that Islamabad should be called Containistan. There were so many containers to block the protesters.
roads.
Internet services were shut down. Chutti was declared in schools. Supplies were not there. I believe even basic things like milk were not able to reach. So, from that perspective, I think Imran Khan, some
Was successful.
achievement to his whole support system was there, that he could manage to do that. And Pakistan, which is undergoing so many problems at the moment, leaving everything, the whole setup was just countering this one person. So definitely a success in terms of his popularity levels was definitely there. But success in terms of what they wanted through the protest was not there. But given, and he said this was the final call and all that stuff he called, but he will, given the way he's obsessed with street politics, Imran Khan, that's been his strategy, using street politics,
Yeah.
using the youth. So he's going to bring that, talk about those calls again. So this is about the political side. You asked
just
about the
to hold you
2024.
here, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that his popularity has risen since he since the elections, and he getting behind bars as well?
I think so, because the very fact that the man is not ready to move out, I believe that there were some talks, and he was offered that,
Exile.
आप चले जाइए exile
Hanji.
में. But then see, his whole forte is that I'm fighting for you. That is what he projects himself, that I'm fighting for Pakistan.
But you think
So
he
if
is?
he goes in exile, that whole sentiment that he's standing for the people is
True.
not going
Will
to be
go away.
there, because his whole support system is based on the fact that he's fighting for Pakistan, he's fighting for you. So that's why, that's how he manages to drive those emotions. And then the anti-military sentiment, the other thing that we saw in 2024, which is very important here, is that we saw the build up in the last year. The sentiments against the military are, I think, very, very strong now. A country like Pakistan, we have seen it going through all kinds of crises. I think
True.
if you have to really, somebody has to just study crisis, they should just study Pakistan, because they have gone through all kind of things, everything they've gone through. So, they have gone through, but military stayed strong.
Yeah.
It was always looked upon as an organization where there was this debate all the time about the fact that there's a lot of spending on defense, and military is interfering in economy, and they have high stakes in economy. But despite all the argument and debate, it was seen as an organization which was the savior for Pakistan, because it projected itself as an organization which was guarding not only the territorial boundaries of the country, but also the ideological boundaries of Pakistan. I think that image, that credibility,
It's
uh,
changing now.
you get a feeling that it's been tarnished.
Ma'am.
The guy is standing and calling names. Is he called Bajwa Mir Jafar, which is not thinkable in Pakistan, Imran Khan. So he's managed to trigger that emotion against the military, and that doesn't appear to be settling down. So I think that part itself, and then given what we see, Asim Munir, he came up, and when he took over, he appeared like a quiet chief. But the changes that he has made, the kind of inroads, further inroads military has been made, are quite remarkable. For example, now you see the economy, which they are going through this crisis where 74% of GDP, the debt stands there. They have, some figures are positive in terms of the growth, but that does not, sorry, indicators are positive in terms of the GDP growth this year, and inflation coming down from 30% to 23%, but 23% itself
That's a
is high.
lot.
But then does that kind of indicate economic growth? I don't think so, because the debt is so high, and the debt servicing for Pakistan actually exceeds their revenue. So how does this whole vicious cycle of debt will ever settle down? This is right now, bailouts and rollovers and IMF loan is there, which is positive. Right now, there is some relief. But will this be sustained?
Right.
And does this actually tell you that Pakistan will grow economy is going to grow? No.
Right.
And the last section on this year, what we saw, which was again, we saw it in 2023 also, was, as you mentioned very rightly, escalation in
Terrorism, yeah.
attacks by TTP, which have really grown this year. So last year's number attack by TTP stood at, till November last year, they were about, say, 650 attacks, and this year till November the numbers came to 857 attacks. And what is significant about these attacks are that these are in two provinces, Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and TTP is focused their attacks on the military personnel, their installation, security personnel. So attacking the military repeatedly, and military's inability to stop it, I think this itself is something which is projecting their vulnerability and weaknesses to the people, and I think this is also impacting the minds. And then also another thing, which we see this year, that first time what we have seen is that all the four provinces are in a mess. So you have the security, terror attacks going on in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. You have Punjab, where we saw PMLN support system was little shaky this time, and what's happening there. And then what is happening in Sindh right now is that because of this corporate farming and Green Pakistan initiative, which the army launched, and because of which they have taken in Sindh 52,000 acres of land for corporate farming, army has taken that, and they're going to be building 6 canals, which will further deprive Sindh of the water,
Okay.
where Sindh is anyway suffering with the shortage of water in Sindh is reported as reported at I think 40 or 45% shortage of water is already there, and these canals which have been announced, the building of these canals will further deprive Sindh and also Balochistan of the existing water supply. So there are tremendous agitation going on there.
Mhm.
There are agitations in PTM Pashtun Tafiz movement. We see that agitation is anyway, the intensity varies, but
Mhm.
it is continuing. So you have this agitation and resentment all over.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's kind of very alarming, the situation. So yeah, if you say some factors, elections happen, government is there, some part of GDP growth is there, IMF loan has come, but by and large, the factors are destabilizing.
Got it. Ma'am, from our previous conversation, one thing that I really took away was that the problem in Pakistan is more of a leadership-based problem, and how the army always influences the political stability as well, or instability for that matter. And now, what I've understood from you now is that the influence of the army is going down. Is there any other instance in the history where the it was as low as now, and there's a lot of, you know, the influence of the Pakistan army getting down, which you're speaking about now, the problem which is now as well. Is there any other instance in the past?
So Shivam, I would like to just make some modification in your this thought process here. So influence in terms of their ability to do things within the country is not changed.
Okay.
That's gone up
Okay.
because of this amendment, their ability to have the political leadership of their choice,
Mhm.
their ability now to even control the judiciary's actions to some extent through the
Hmm.
political leadership,
Hmm.
because the appointment of the Supreme Court uh, judges, how will it happen, the Chief Justice, so that part. Then the creation of the Special Investment Facilitation Council, which is called the SIFC,
Mhm.
which is there to attract the foreign investments in Pakistan, is also has a military, has a dominant role there. Then the corporate farming has come in, so they have the land also there. So their ability to control things has not reduced, that has gone up. But their image in terms of the organization, how it
Hmm.
is looked upon, that image has been tarnished. We did not see falling it this low. Uh, Apart, I mean, I think
During
once we saw
71.
it, 71 definitely, that's
Yes.
there.
Hmm.
But if you talk of the last, say, 15, 20 years when we've seen so much change in Pakistan,
Hmm.
I think when Osama bin Laden was killed,
Okay.
then Kayani, that was one time I heard that military's image was really tarnished. And somebody was traveling here from Pakistan, one of the journalists, and she said that in Islamabad and Rawalpindi we have the auto rickshaws which have a little write-up behind them saying that please don't honk, the military is sleeping. So we had those kind of noises at that time, but nothing like this,
Hmm.
where physically they were not able to now control. So that we saw the image going down, but we also saw how Pakistan Army managed to revive itself.
Got
How
it.
did it revive itself at that time? Nawaz Sharif was in power, and if you remember, you must have been very young at that time, but you remember Imran Khan walking on the streets agitating against Nawaz Sharif. So they really had Imran planted against Nawaz
Hmm.
around that time, not on that year, but that was the period when
Now
we
it's
saw this
reversed.
agitation from Imran Khan to kind of squeeze
Hmm.
Nawaz Sharif's arms. And then we saw at that time, what did the military do? One was the politically they controlled inside everything, and second part we saw that it really displayed its military muscle. So they conducted the counter-terror operations.
Mhm.
Two very big operations were conducted, Radul Fasad and the other one, which was conducted there at that time to establish their whole writ, I would say there. So, but this time we see them that they have controlled the political setup, but the security aspect they have not been able to control, because this time the security aspect has a very strong hold in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
So the TTP obviously has a very strong support system from the Afghan Taliban. and this is making the whole situation very complicated for the military,
Right.
and Pakistan's very high dependence on the external assistance for the
True.
survival.
True. We'll speak
So
about that
how
as
do
well.
you conduct operations or do these things when you are looking for an IMF loan, or which they've got now? But then some time back they were also struggling to get out of the FATF grey list. So multiple things, but yeah, the situation is complex. So
Another problem that I would like to highlight, and I would like you to speak more about, is the problem of their spending on military and security. And another thing that I understood from a seminar that I attended that CAPS had organized was their Pakistan Army's obsession to counter India. Do you think that is a major problem for let's talk about their economics now? The Pakistan our economy is going down because of their obsession with India in terms of
yes and no, Shivam. So I wouldn't say like that's the only factor, but that's obsession with India has been a contributing factor, and indirectly, the contributing factor in the sense that that whole position. If you look at their obsession with India, which has been there from day one, that they want to be at par with India, and this factor of being the desire to be at par with India kind of defined Pakistan's national priorities. So the national priorities did not become being a welfare state. The national priority was how do we now be at par with India or counter India. And in that, I'm just simplifying it. Obviously, it's a very
does
long debate, and I've written extensively on that in my previous books. But then that desire to stay at par with India, competing with India, obviously, one of the results that we saw was a very, very powerful army. Because why was this desire to counter India? Because India was now continuously projected as a threat. And that was very much in the minds of people that India needs to be countered. And to counter India, you need the military. That's why military needs to be all powerful, because they will save your boundaries. They are the guardian for your boundaries, ideological, territorial, as I said. And that's why the allocation to the military for modernization of the equipment has to be unconditional, even at the cost of the development expenditure. So what happened in this whole process, that the development expenditure took a hit.
low, yeah.
We saw it consistently taking a hit. So they're spending, for example, on very critical social sectors of health and education remains very, very low. A large number of Pakistan's population, that if we see roughly with the school going kids, for example, the primary school, 50% of them don't go to school. So this is a scary situation, right? The unemployment rate is so high. And one of the examples that you would see is that today, I was reading, in fact, this last week or last to last week, there was a report in one of the dailies which said that 50,000, 45 to 50,000 applications for passports come to Pakistan, the passport office every day, because every day, or it's
People want to leave.
people want to leave. So I don't know how much of the time period, but there's a large number of, the desire to leave the country is very, very strong. Outside the country, some of the reports came that 90% of the beggars who are kind of arrested for
Are from Pakistan.
are from Pakistan.
Yeah.
So, and then Saudi Arabia, if you remember, had this whole thing with Pakistan that stopped doing this.
True.
You are sending, they come as religious pilgrims,
Yeah.
but they are. So this, you had this whole, you have the indirect effect of that obsession showing everywhere. So you are you are doing modernization of the military. And now because you want to modernize the military and stay at par with India in that military modernization, Pakistan's alliances were driven by that. China became a natural partner because of the hostility both the countries shared
Anti-India
against
sentiment.
India. And that we saw how China kind of supplied Pakistan with the equipment, nuclear arsenal, and also now the delivery systems. and also building up their indigenous defense capabilities. China played a very strong role.
True.
Alliance with United States, for that matter, also was driven by the fact that they wanted to get the Western equipment, and all this happened at the cost of the development expenditure within Pakistan. So indirectly, that obsession with India, it has a role where Pakistan kind
So,
of stands today. So, and then the whole one aspect was the economy. And the other aspect was that once after 71 war, there was a realization that there's no way Pakistan can, you know, beat India in the conventional capability. They opted for the nuclear path. And Bhutto then decided that Pakistan needs to have nuclear weapons. So then now the nuclear weapons became a priority. That spending there started, investment of resources. And now under that umbrella of nuclear arsenal, or the bomb that they claim that they managed to have in 87 itself, they really accelerated the proxy war, which we saw from as early as 1947, when the first war happened. The tribals who came into India were dressed as tribal, but they were retired military officers. In fact, one of the books, which is called Raiders in Kashmir, by a Pakistani military officer, Akbar Khan, he talks about it in detail, how the thing was planned. So proxy wars was very much a part of the strategy, and it really, we saw it being escalated once they had the nuclear weapons.
got it.
So everything, and then because they kind of adopted a strategy of proxy war, the resources there. That's why the strategy in Afghanistan, and then you see what happened with Afghanistan, how it has kind of, it is the whole strategy which they felt is a big success for them. It hasn't paid them off. In fact, there has been a blowback in the form of TTP.
Right.
So there is a deep linkage to everything that you see right now in Pakistan.
Can we talk a little about the financial crisis that they're going through? There's unemployment, there is, inflation. Do you think all of these problems are coming from their debt crisis that they intake from a lot of different entities, such as the IMF, Saudi, the US bails them out sometimes? And I also want to understand from you, the second part of this question is that why do institutions still support and back Pakistan even after such a turmoil in Pakistan? I was reading about how they've got a debt about $133 billion from exterior institutions.
So debt has been circular in Pakistan. So it's to cut a long story short, obviously, is that I'm not getting into numbers here, but it's pretty scary in the numbers. As I said, around 74% of the GDP is the total debt. If you
What, 85.8 trillion rupees
yeah.
is the total debt.
So now we have seen Pakistan non-stop in the circle of actually taking the new loans to repay the own one, and that cycle is not settled. And high dependence on debt is because of, in simple terms, there is lack of revenue. A lack of revenue because the tax base is very low.
True.
The GDP to tax ratio is extremely low there.
Exports aren't too much.
Exports aren't too much. There is continued political instability. And you kind of have this whole diversion of resources from development to non-development aspect. If you see the economic survey, that at the moment shows their defense expenditure, spending, budget, whatever you want to call it, at 1.9%, I think, something like that,
Of the
which
GDP?
doesn't
doesn't match with
it
the
doesn't
reality.
match. Yeah, exactly. But that is the defense expenditure. But if you actually look at and calculate the defense spending, that is much more than this. The acquisition of the major equipment in Pakistan is not part of the defense budget. So that is the major chunk of the defense budget, anyways. So the real spending is much more than the projected defense expenditure.
Okay.
So you don't kind of you don't see that.
That's a link.
I mean, you everything that is done and spent on defense is not reflected in the budget.
Mhm.
They don't have a very transparent budget. I don't know what's the situation now, but for a long time it used to be a one-line budget given and passed without any questioning. In fact, when you study Pakistan, you realize that the political leadership has been never allowed to question. There are four or five domains which are very
Hmm.
critical for the military, which the political leadership is not never allowed to interfere. And so one of them is defense budget and acquisitions. The second is the military, you know, strategy, the acquisitions, or sorry, second is a nuclear arsenal.
Deterrence. Mhm.
Third is their strategy vis-a-vis India and Afghanistan. So these three, any of the political leaders for the last say 20, 30 years, anybody who has tried to get into this domain
Mhm.
is this is it kind of the fate of the political leader has not been good. So military has always guarded these domains, and they remain very much a crucial part of
Mhm.
their strategic calculations there. So yeah, your second part was that how does it survive? So right now, what we see is because there is lack of revenue base is short. So you see high dependence on debt, and now the IMF loan has come through, and we see indicators in the recent economic survey which is talking about reduction of inflation,
Mhm.
increase in the GDP, but the cost of living has gone very high in
Yeah.
Pakistan because of the fact that the IMF loan comes with very strict conditionalities, and those conditionalities include
Structural changes.
increasing the energy prices. So,
Oh,
for example, the fuel, the electricity, these pricing is very high in Pakistan, and
there were protests because of that as
there
well.
were protests, and they have read these are some of the factors which have really taken a toll on the cost of living there.
Hmm.
And this is all reported in the Pakistan dailies. It's not that I'm saying because I'm sitting here in India, 8% GDP growth, and I'm
Hmm.
feeling it's not. It's seriously sad about how the country functions and how in this whole military's attitude, and that's what happened in a military happens in a military run state. So somebody asked me this question that why, because what happened in Pakistan is because it was so much controlled by the military and it continues to be controlled.
Hmm.
All the policies that you see, domestic and international, are catering to the interest of the military.
Mhm.
Even the alliances. Now, your second part was that why do people give loan to Pakistan? Why is IMF given loan? Because the fact that it remains critical to these actors, Pakistan remains very crucial for China.
Yeah.
So China cannot allow Pakistan. In fact, it's very interesting that for a long time, Pakistan kind of built up its own position and a narrative that it's a country which is too dangerous to fail because it's a nuclear weapon state. It has terrorism
Hmm.
and the terror organizations which are based there, and the arsenal supposedly, which is the most, it's the rapidly expanding arsenal, is how they project their nuclear arsenal.
Is it also because of their geographical location?
So geographical
Central
location,
Asia,
yes,
West Asia, and
of course, that's
East
one of the
Southeast Asia.
factors which has been there from the beginning. This was the factor Pakistan was born with: geography.
Hmm.
The factors that it managed to create for its relevance were the nuclear weapons and terrorism.
Mhm.
And then it kind of positioned itself that even if they are failing, the world can't allow them to fail.
Hmm.
But that, I think, was challenged in the last 2 years because they really struggled for loan this time.
Yeah.
So if you say US positioning with them has been because US
Afghanistan.
sees them to some extent. They have had three very critical phases of strategic alliance,
Hmm.
and US would like to keep them warm to some extent
Is it?
because if you see if Operation targeting Zawahiri, they
Hmm.
used Pakistan's assistance, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So they would not like to completely have
Change the
Pakistan on
power
this side.
dynamic. Mhm.
Very important part here is also that with the three phases of alliance which we have seen with US Pakistan, there are very strong people to people connect also there.
Acha.
There are, because they have worked very closely. You have large number of Pakistani diaspora who is in Washington, and whole of US, but you see that you do see that influence there, and the support system which comes from into this bilateral relationships from that factor, people to people. So these will be these are the factors. So we see a change in that relationship from US, where US is no more giving them security assistance, which Pakistan has been very keen, but there is the support which is coming on the non-security aspects. So IMF, if you see, is it could not have come without the US
The
support.
US.
But this time IMF loan, even the last year what we saw, there was a lot of conditionalities from IMF that you will have to ensure us कि भाई आप हमसे पैसे लेके आप चाइना को पैसे नहीं दोगे. So that surety
Your article
they
mentioned
wanted.
that the IMF had requested for some structural changes as well in Pakistan.
Yeah, so increase to change the fiscal. So that's why
Mostly of
increase in
energy?
taxation.
Okay.
Increase in taxation was one of those structural changes that tax base needs to go up so that the revenue goes up.
Got it.
That was, if you ask in very simple terms, that was the structural changes. When I said it implied that. And for China, it remains important. So
Right.
you have these support systems which are coming, and the Islamic world, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they had a role to play in getting Pakistan out of the recent crisis, for sure, because some amount of rollovers happened from there, money came from there, which stabilized their reserves. The foreign reserves had gone down very low for Pakistan. So that stabilized. That's why you see some reflection somewhere. But how sustainable is that?
Got
And
it.
does this imply that Pakistan is not going to take fresh loans? I mean, that remains
That's
a
not
big,
possible.
That's
No,
the
but
question.
you were talking about how US would like them to be in good books with Pakistan. Do you think that would change with Trump coming again in Trump 2.0?
So it's very interesting, because when Trump's this whole US elections happened, and so there was this light of hope in Pakistan suddenly in the media that Trump met Imran Khan, and he did not meet. Biden did not meet Imran
Right.
Khan, so Trump might be good for us. But that there was a whole story for how Trump met him. So one of the senators in US who met Imran Khan came to Trump at that time and said that I met this guy and he's like you. So Trump said, if he's like me, he must be a good guy. So he met Imran Khan. So that was on a lighter note. So there was some hope which came
They are-
that
they are
maybe
good.
Imran Khan will benefit with Trump coming in. But I don't think that's going to be the situation, because if you see the major curtailing of all the defense assistance happened during Trump's time. So he took a very tough position at that time because he could see that nothing is coming from there. He made his famous tweet, which came on 1st of January, was also about the fact that we've done enough for them. So I don't see a major change in the US position with Trump.
Got it.
Some changes might happen. So currently the relationship where we see is that the US is kind of, the relationship is there, but US assistance we see coming in the in the non-military sectors. So which is energy, climate, other things. It's not a counter-terror for that matter, narcotics, but not on the security domain. Not at the moment. Pakistan has multiple times talked about it and said that they would like to revive the security assistance and they
Got
would
it.
want the equipment, but it hasn't happened. And then second crucial partner is China for Pakistan, which the support has started, I would say, from 60s, and I take the marker of the big, that relationship, the beginning from the Shakscam Valley Agreement, which was signed in 63. That has been pretty sustained, and we have now seen the expansion in the domain of that relationship. So which the relationship which started as primarily as a security assistance now went into the economic domain. CPEC came into being, and very importantly now what we see is on the diplomatic front, where China has taken Kashmir to the UN Security
Yeah.
Council. It wants to project it and take it on the multilateral forums. So we have seen the diplomatic. We have also seen how China has used its veto when we and United States we have tried to block the Pakistan-based terrorists and put
Mhm.
them in the blacklist. So Pakistan, China has been a tough guy there,
Right.
supporting Pakistan. So that part in the last 10 years has become more prominent in this relationship, the
Mhm.
diplomatic assistance from
Hmm.
that, along with what's going on. So China remains a firm support, according to me. Yeah.
Since you spoke about China, there have been a lot of targeted killings as well of Chinese civilians in Pakistan.
There
Your
have
take on that, ma'am?
there have been
And any implications in the Pakistan-China relationship because of
So
that?
there have been Chinese workers have been targeted, yes, and that number has gone up more as compared to what we saw in the last say 7 8 years.
Hmm.
And what we have the reports which are coming is that the Baluch Liberation Army, they have collaboration with the TTP, and that's how it's happening. So Chinese have been worried for the first time, they have been so vocal about it. So the Chinese ambassador talked about it, and they are saying that this is not acceptable. They have also proposed that they would like to have their people on the ground taking up
Hmm.
the role of guarding the Chinese workers there. But I think Pakistan is definitely not. It's not in favor of that. We have
Mhm.
not heard anything beyond that. There is a security force which guards CPEC projects, which is there.
Mhm.
But the Chinese have, I think, read some reports where they have requested to have their own people on the ground doing that. So no progress on that front, and I think that's only going to further intensify position situation for Pakistan. So that I don't think is happening. The other angle, what we have seen, which is a very recently what happened, which was very interesting, is that um, Pakistan is seeking China's support that they should talk to the Taliban to control TTP,
Hmm.
the Afghan Taliban.
Okay.
Because Chinese have invested money in Afghanistan, they have their ambassador there. They've also accepted the Taliban ambassador in China.
Acha.
They have not they're saying we are not recognizing.
Hmm.
So I don't know what recognizing in their dictionary means, but in the recent report, also what I got to know that they're going to be offering Afghanistan tariff free, access to their market.
Mhm.
So Pakistan in November, what we heard that there were these talks between China and Pakistan that why don't you talk to Taliban, and the delegation, 6 member delegation from China did go to Kandahar
Mhm.
to put this across. But what I heard was this: nothing came out of it, and Afghan Taliban definitely are not ready to act against the
Mhm.
TTP. So now this is exactly what Pakistan did. They created their strategic assets, which were the terror outfits, and used them against India.
Mhm.
Afghanistan is sees TTP as their strategic asset and wants to kind of take the advantage of that and you know put pressure on continued pressure on Pakistan.
Mhm.
And they are the same ideology, two sides of the same coin. They cannot take action against TTP.
Mhm.
As TTP was very helpful to the Taliban and how they came into power in terms of fighting the war which the Taliban fought.
Hmm.
And if you know about the Pashtunwali, the whole culture will not allow them to kind of go against the TTP.
Got it.
So that I don't see right now Taliban having any intent of controlling the TTP in any
Mhm.
form, and that's this will remain a sour point, I
Mhm.
think, for some time.
Got it.
I mean, there are no easy answers to that. But what your question was that what are the
Implications.
implications?
Mhm.
So the implications, I think, are right now. So when the statement came from China that this is not acceptable, there was a lot of hula bala here that this relationship is
Mhm.
ruined. So I think the implication will be in the form of slowing down of the CPEC projects. There might be. There are a lot of problems there, I've
With
heard.
CPEC, yeah.
So maybe the projects will slow down, maybe other things. But the deeper implication in terms of what happens to this alliance, which is targeted against India,
Hmm.
will that change? The nature of that alliance, will that change? I don't think so.
So you're saying
That's not going to
this
change.
alliance's sole purpose is to counter India?
I mean, that's China. For China, Pakistan is the is a is the
A proxy.
cheapest
Hmm.
cheapest option to have a proxy against India, or
Mhm.
to have a to. I mean, they have their interest in terms of energy, and they are now they've taken charge of Gwadar, where they will control the oil routes
Hmm. Hmm.
eventually. But one of the main reasons behind the alliance is the common hostility they had
Against
against
Indian.
India. So for China, they gave the nuclear weapons to Pakistan. If you have to see, they gave the equipment to Pakistan. They gave the nuclear weapons to Pakistan.
Hmm.
They themselves have a NFU, but Pakistan has
Pakistan
a
doesn't
first
have.
use policy.
Hmm.
And but they continue. So even with this crisis going on, the financial crisis which has been going on for some time,
Hmm.
the military modernization and the nuclear arsenal
Doesn't
development
stop.
hasn't changed.
Hmm.
They launched they tested the MERV missile.
Hmm.
They have tested another missile recently. So that development is going on at a different pace. That doesn't, you see, when you talked about the defense budget. So that's the point here.
Hmm.
So this crisis, so that means the money is not going from the budget, right?
Yeah.
That's why the expansion and the modernization never stops,
Hmm.
because large number from the conventional capability, large number of equipment comes from China, which they would be having. I'm sure that nothing is in the open domain, but
Mhm.
one can sense that it's definitely not coming out of the budgetary resources.
Mhm.
And then you have the nuclear weapons also. So how is this development happening? If it is happening, it can't be from that 1.9% of the budget, which
Mhm.
is so reliant on external. And IMF cannot be giving them money to buy the Chinese equipment for sure.
Mhm.
So
Ma'am, a little bit about the energy aspect in Pakistan. There's been speculations that they have found oil, some fourth largest oil reserves in the ocean bed, and the prime minister is also talking about the blue economy of Pakistan. But this is not the first time that these speculations have risen.
So we've heard this before. We've heard this again. So we see this, like same thing is for Afghanistan, where every few years you come and say that my God, it has resources, billions of
Hmm.
dollars, but nothing where. What is happening? And does Pakistan now have the resources at all to even to use these resources? A lot of investment is required. So one part should be then logically in this, if the studies are done and this has been found out. I haven't
Gotten into it.
yeah, but then if it is there, then it should be attracting a lot of foreign investment given this. And if you see a linkage, this whole statements and narrative started to come out when Pakistan is really looking for
Mhm.
foreign investment, and as SIFC is actually keenly exploring more and more investment. So, do we see that linkage here? Could be some truth, but then Pakistan should have done it what they should have done it, or Saudi Arabia should have got into it by now. We will see at
Right.
times to come, that if it's how much of truth is in
Mhm.
there in those reports.
One of the reasons of having this conversation about Pakistan and all its different aspects was to understand its strategic posture in respect to India. Would you like to comment on it, ma'am, a little bit?
So, the strategic posture, what we have traditionally seen, has been its reliance on, proxy war.
Mhm.
It's now a continuation of its buildup of its conventional capability, and projecting that it is continuously managing to modernize its forces to counter India. Buildup of the nuclear capability, for sure, because that is something you've seen what happens with the nuclear weapons, that the projection that Pakistan has is very critical, that it has a projection of ambiguity where it doesn't have a written doctrine, but
Hmm.
it talks about the first use, and then it continuously talks about the buildup of the capability. where it has now talking about the full spectrum deterrence. It is talking about a large range of weapons, where it has zero range weapons it talks about, and then you have Shaheen 3, which is 2,750 kilometers range. Now you have the MERV missile there. So you have this wide spectrum which it talks about of the range of weapons here. And more importantly, so here I don't think anything changes. That remains very much the same. So if you have to, one has to see that how, with all this crisis, what are we going, how will Pakistan shape up against India, or what do we see for us? That's the question that we have in terms when we are studying Pakistan. This is what our objective is as an Indian
To
scholar,
understand for
right? That
India.
how it's going to be affecting us. So how it will affect us? I think the weaker the state, the messier it is for us. And I'm not saying that I want to see Pakistan in the most strong position or anything. I'm not even saying that. But the point is that the crisis state will be more reliant on the proxy means, which it is continuing, which we have seen
we
that
see
it
it
has,
uprising.
even with this crisis, it is trying to revive terrorism in Jammu. And how did it react, and then its reliance on nuclear weapons is definitely going to go up, because that it sees as a shield against any counter from India that could happen in retaliation to its acts of terror. So we will see that buildup of the weapons. Its ambiguity in terms of the nuclear capability definitely will be there. And very importantly, there is that it keeps talking about the first use, but simultaneously it also will keep projecting, and it is already doing, projecting itself as a responsible nuclear power. And along with this, there is a third thread that we see in the posturing, that while it projects itself as a sincere and responsible power, where it doesn't even have a written doctrine, but it continuously questions the sincerity of India's no first use, the seriousness and sincerity of, that how they will always create those doubt that India's we don't trust India's NFU. So that will continue. We will see more efforts from Pakistan. My sense is to internationalize Kashmir. That is something which
They've been trying to do that, but I
they
don't
will
think so
continue.
they'll
They will.
succeed.
This will. The intensity changes, but it's not going to stop. So that's continuously going to go there. But another dimension which had, come in during Bajwa's time, where we saw Pakistan trying to project itself towards, focused on geoeconomics. So from geopolitics to geoeconomics was this whole term which Bajwa was using. So that shift Pakistan is trying to do, that, we are very concerned that we need to focus on energy. And then to your point that this has been found in Pakistan, the reserves are there. So that shift towards geoeconomics, that projection definitely will be there. How much of efforts will go in that, one is doubtful, because of the way military is taking charge on things, and the way they are so engrossed in their internal mess right now. They don't even have the time to think about these things, because the entire energy is focused on Imran Khan.
Right.
The one man has just, attracted everything towards him. So I mean, how they will do it, that path is not clear to me. Because in everything, if the answer is military, I don't know how one institution goes and does the agriculture also. It attracts the foreign investment also. It defends your ideological boundaries also. It guards your territories also. I mean, how can one institution just do everything? It's kind of, one thinks about it, that how do you position yourself, where is that capability in that institution to do. One major general sitting is now deciding that how do you make the land more fertile, and he's also deciding that how will you fight TTP, and he's also deciding how will you defend your borders against India, and he's also deciding on the acquisition of equipment from US and China. So it's, if the way Pakistan has come up now, the movement towards geoeconomics looks difficult, although the projection is will continue there. But for us, I think their intent doesn't change.
It
The
remains the same.
intensity might change, partially because of the crisis
Of the
there,
caliber as well, the
and
capacity.
very large part, the credit should go to us because our growth, our
Yes.
diplomatic position,
True.
and second, our resolve,
Hmm.
the way we reacted to Pakistan's act of terror, which we have
Hmm.
now not done in the past. So I think a very clear position from India, that of no tolerance,
Hmm.
that's also a deterrent. So you have a
Yes.
combination of these factors, but will this actually change the entire strategic calculus in Pakistan, and it will just become कि भाई हम terrorism use नहीं करेंगे? I don't think that's going to happen.
What do you think needs to change in Pakistan, ma'am? I know, I know, there's a lot of things, but if you were given the power of changing the situation in Pakistan, I asked the same question to Mr. Tilak Devishar, and he said he would run away.
So your room is just on the first floor. If it was a higher building, I would have said I would jump out of the building. But I can't say. But yeah, on a serious note, if I was, one thing I think could needs definitely many things there, but I think more investment in in people,
In
human
people.
capital. That's Pakistan has completely failed to do.
Mhm.
So how do you not have a large percentage of children not going to school, living under this deep poverty,
Mhm.
lack of employment opportunities? Why even the educated ones want to be out of Pakistan? So investment in people, those sectors, education, health,
True.
their way of life. I think that is the asset which Pakistan has not realized. So they keep on putting money in the strategic assets in the terror organizations, but the real assets are the people, where investment has never gone. So
But
I
we
think
don't see that
that is the
happening. We
change.
don't see that happening anytime soon.
With the setup that we have now, no, these national priorities that we see now, unfortunately, that would not. So national priorities definitely need to change,
Hmm.
and investment in people, I think Pakistan needs. I think I'm sure they're realizing it, but their inability to do it, realizing, because every political party is so dependent on the
The
military
military, yes.
that they just don't assert. I don't think they assert themselves.
But do you think now that Imran Khan is getting popular and he's against the military, and if he happened to get out of the,
But how will he get out? That's the big question. So every successive change which is coming in Pakistan under Asim Munir is not giving us any indication that he's going to be out of jail. Not as of now.
hmm,
But in Pakistan, anything can
anything
happen.
happen?
So don't be surprised that after 7 8 months he becomes the prime minister and there's something goes wrong with Shehbaz Sharif
Hmm,
and he is behind bars. So anything can happen,
that's true.
but till the next week, I don't think
Ma'am,
that's happening.
to end our conversation, I would like you to give me prediction for Pakistan for 2025. How do you think they are going to cope up with all the situations that are happening internally and as well as external situations?
So I don't think I'm in that kind of a position to do that. But if you just ask me as a person who studies Pakistan, I think the underlying issues in the crisis will
You
go
already
on.
mentioned.
Economy, that's not changing.
Hmm.
The TTP problem is going to be very complex for Pakistan, and their relationship um, with Afghanistan is something that they will have. That requires very serious consideration from that side. So internally, I think the economy, if the current regime stays, everything is okay. Economy will sustain at this level where it is.
Hmm.
But externally, I think Pakistan will work very hard to revive itself, and with the external factors, I see a lot of focus there. So where I've traditionally talked about the 4 R's, which I see, so it's kind of reviving relationship with the United States,
Hmm.
retaining the momentum of its relationship with Beijing,
With
with
China.
China,
Hmm.
regaining Saudi Arabia's trust, which is it
That's
is
true.
doing now, and with Sharifs, it's easier for them to do.
Hmm.
And one part is reconditioning its kind of bonhomie with Russia, which it can't do much right now because it wants to
In
be in the
themselves.
good books of United
Hmm.
States, but they would like to kind of keep that up. So I we would see these factors here, it working very hard, trying to build up its, and internally we will see some more maybe military operations happening countering the TTP, but too much of change in this situation I don't see in 2025.
No? Beautiful, ma'am. Every time I'm having a conversation with Pakistan, I feel that I don't know enough because there's so much things that come in. But today, I feel that I've learned so much about Pakistan, so much insight in terms of their internal, external situation. And I'm sure the audience had a lot of takeaways as well. Always a pleasure to have you over, ma'am. Thank you so much for being a
Thank
part
you,
of this.
Shivam. Thank you so much. Thank you. Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Likewise, ma'am. We at DOAP are working really hard to take this podcast to the next level. Our guests are going to get even better, our production quality is going to get even better, and hopefully, I'm going to get even better too. Most importantly, we are committed to being consistent and continue to do what we love the most. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.